أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويأتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the believers, men and women, are protectors one of another. They enjoin what is just and forbid what is evil. They observe regular prayers, pay zakat, and obey Allah and His Messenger. On them will Allah pour His mercy, for Allah is exalted in power, the All-Wise. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. And for today's episode, as you know, here at Islam for Europeans, we advocate that every group of converts to Islam who have a particular heritage and background should collectivize so that they can better preach the message of Islam to their families and communities, and also so they can present a synthesized version of their culture that their people can readily see, getting rid of the bad things in their culture and keeping the things that are, Islamically acceptable. So, that way, this has several positive effects. One is that this will not drain the greater Muslim community's resources. And also just for, helping to acclimate new converts to Islam. So those are just two benefits of that. We're not advocating for separation from existent Muslim sub-communities altogether. They can still pray in our centers, and we will give them their full Islamic rights. But for those Muslim subcultures that they already belong to, they already have their own sub-communities, their own organizations, their own restaurants, their own clothing lines, right? So in short, Islam has been successfully melded into their culture, into their urf, right? And this is a very important aspect of Islam that is tragically understudied. And that's great for them, right? But for the non-Muslim population that they're living in, Islam seems very foreign to them, to the non-Muslims. And that's why Muslims living in a non-Muslim country need to allow converts from a certain background to collectivize in the same way that they have done, right? This doesn't just go for Muslims of European descent, but we advocate the exact same thing for any group of converts, whether those are Latino Muslims or African American Muslims or Native American Muslims, and so on and so forth. So for this video, I've been meaning to talk about an important topic that relates to how we're going to move forward as an organization here, because we're starting out very small. I just had to really think about the best way to articulate this. So up until now, the overwhelming majority of our subscribers to our channel have been Muslim men, specifically white convert Muslim men, right? And we are trying to build, inshallah, sub-communities of European Muslims throughout the West, that could provide great resources for the greater Muslim community and for ourselves, for our survival as Muslims. But that cannot be done unless we have both genders involved, right? So when we look at other movements, by groups that have historically converted to Islam, or even in contemporary times, for example, the African American Muslim community, they converted to Islam en masse in the United States. So for them, their story of group conversion is rooted in the fact that their descendants were slaves. They were sold from Africa. They were taken by force to the Americas, and almost all of them were stripped of their original Islamic religion. So for them, for their descendants, converting to Islam was a return to the faith of their ancestors, right? So, and this concept, applied both equally to Black American men and women. We talk about historical, famous Black American Muslim converts like Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, but also equally, we have women such as Betty Shabazz, the wife of Malcolm X, and Muhammad Ali's daughter, Layla Ali. So there's this feeling that Islam is part of the fabric of the African American experience, right? And with Latino Muslims, their conversion in groups was a return to the religion of their forefathers in Spain, or Al Andalus, which is a major reason why there are several Spanish and Arabic cognates in their languages. And just recently, Islam in Spanish, has equal representation between men and women, right? So they, convert to Islam around equal rates. I think even more Latino women convert to Islam, and they have parts of that exist in their own spheres. I mean, but for it's not for Europeans. I mean, one might ask why, even though we're just starting out, why are there so few women who are even watching my videos? Because I look at the rate, the demographics who watching my videos, it's like 95% men. Who no women are watching our videos, let alone agreeing with our concept, let alone joining our organization. So I wanted to talk about some of the reasons why this may be and possible solutions. But they're both, I guess the reasons why are both, surface level and just a bit more deep. So on the surface level, just the fact that I'm a Muslim man, I mean, just by default, most of my followers are going to be other Muslim men, right? So on top of that, almost all the interviews I've given so far are with other men. So it's almost like, Muslim men have existed in like this kind of YouTube atmosphere. And they're just, I guess, fewer, as far as I know, fewer female Muslim YouTubers to begin with. And as we know, Islam is also very strict on gender separation, so at mosques, men and women's prayer rooms are totally separate, if they have a section for women at all. And these gender mores, they shift into the online world as well. So there are etiquettes that Muslims have, created, that you're supposed to follow when it comes to gender relations, right? So normally, even DMing a Muslim of the opposite gender, is considered uncouth, in the Muslim online world. So just by default, you're going to have almost no communication between white Muslim men and white Muslim women, right? Now, you might say, I know that wouldn't that be across the board, for all Muslim subcultures? Well, that's not necessarily true, because when you look at existent Muslim subcommunities, even though Islam is very gender separated in all spheres, you still have two-way communication between genders within the same families, right? So brother to sister, husband to wife, father to daughter, mother to son, nephew to niece, right? So if there's a community event, there's equal ways for both men and women to communicate with one another so that they can function as a group, right? So that's definitely one major thing. The fact that we don't have a sub community really adds to the fact that we can't organize, as a community, but I think the problem goes a lot even deeper than this. So, I mean, we're living in 2022. The whole idea of European converts doing the same thing as Latino and African American Muslims can come across as incredibly right wing and, on the surface, borderline racist, given the current zeitgeist, right? So that's point number two, is that our idea is falsely being associated as this kind of right wing, strictly nativist, exclusivist concept, right? And when you're talking about gender differences, I'm just generalizing here, women on average, especially for women converts to Islam, they tend to be more on the left of the political spectrum socially and politically. So most white female converts I know, they tend to have a lot of white guilt. They tend to take the university classes on gender studies and CRT. And when you're talking about gender differences, they're more likely to convert at the universities, or other left-wing fields like in social work, where the Marxist model of Islam has really kind of taken hold, where Islam is kind of seen as more of an identity than a universal religion for everybody. So a lot of white converts, especially women, who are following this kind of Marxist model, are going to have a knee-jerk reaction to the idea of white people, even if they're Muslim, collectivizing for any reason whatsoever. Right. So, and also, I mean, I've also noticed that a lot of born Muslim women tend to, on average, have more negative opinions of non-Muslim white people. Right. So, I mean, this is understandable to a degree. I mean, obviously, one of the reasons is that if you wear the hijab and you're a visible Muslim, and you're a person of color, right off the bat, this is going to increase the level of anxiety and fear and resentment towards the non-Muslim population that you're living in, right? So, I mean, every white person that looks at you as a visible Muslim, they have to think about the possibility that I could be attacked by this person. Right? I guess Muslim men, by contrast, they don't have to wear clothing that would identify them as Muslim if they don't want to. So to an extent, I guess they don't feel the same level of anxiety and resentment that visible Muslim women feel. So, and also this statistic is changing, but I would say percentage-wise, Muslim men, I guess, are more likely to be working in the Anglosphere, where they're interacting with the general population on a daily basis, right? So I know several Muslim men who are mechanics, taxi drivers, right? So, and I guess they're more likely to get an even representation of the Anglosphere's opinion on Islam as compared to someone who doesn't interact with the Anglosphere at all. And I know some women who don't interact with the Anglosphere at all, except for like the online world. I remember the poll that I did, for white Canadians involved the Freedom Convoy. So, conservative white Canadians, 57% of white Canadians in that group, not just, within this, the Freedom Convoy sphere, either have a positive or neutral view of Islam. Right. So why am I saying this? I mean, I'm saying this because white Muslim women are almost exclusively going to be interacting with other Muslim women. Right. So, then that's the whole, and that's why I think the sort of the zeitgeist, the attitudes towards white people is going to be much higher in anxiety and fear and resentment than, say, for example, white Muslim men, especially if they themselves, wear the hijab. And that's not to say that Muslim men, aren't discriminated against as well. But I've already talked about this in a previous video that it's far more complicated than that, just because of for sheer numbers. If you're living in a white majority country, by sheer numbers, there's going to be more white people that hate Islam compared to, say, Chinese or Hindus, right? So, and another reason, getting deeper, is that Islam for Europeans, currently we really don't have that much to offer in terms of support. And I think we're still at the conceptual phase. We don't have any centers, we don't have any offices, we don't have any restaurants. And I'd say that convert Muslim women tend to be in far more vulnerable positions than convert Muslim men. Not to say that Muslim men cannot be in vulnerable positions, but women are just more likely to be abused by their family for converting. Some of them have kids from previous marriages. So a lot of these times, these women are looking for protection, right? I mean, if we had an I4E center in every city in the West made up of European descendant converts, we could provide services that current mosques are simply not equipped for. For example, we may have brothers who are, white converts that may be willing to talk to the convert woman's family members, either on the phone or in a neutral territory like the Tim Hortons. Or you might have other European descended sisters that can at least befriend this new convert, and kind of just show them the ropes and give them the best advice based on specific life situations that they have been in, what they went through, right? And maybe even introduce them to their family. And even if that sister does not say a word to the other the new convert's family about Islam, you don't have to say anything at all. I mean, you can still incrementally allay their family's fears and misconceptions, right? You're not going to get that with most imams in most masjids in the West. I mean, they're not going to be able to do that. First of all, a lot of imams don't want to enter into these fears in the first place. Maybe there's dogs or alcohol. Also, they don't, like, even if the imam wants to talk to the convert's family, most of the time the convert's family doesn't want to talk to them, right? And a lot of times the convert is actually hiding Islam from
their family. So that's a no-go. But if you introduce the convert friend to another convert friend, you can sort of like have a positive impact just by mere exposure, right? So, and again, it's not like mosques are really prepared to help convert women for the most part anyway, right? I mean, I've even heard at some mosques after a white woman converts to Islam, the imam will literally take out a list of brothers and their phone numbers. These brothers are looking for a convert spouse to get married to them right away. So, I mean, they just try to solve all these problems that way by just having them marry, a complete stranger, instead of trying to find out ways of improving, the current issues that they're currently facing, which is within their non-Muslim sphere. And that leads me to another, reason why a lot of women haven't joined Islam for Europeans, and it's a big one, and that is that most white convert women are already engaged or already married to born Muslim men, right? And usually, I mean, these women do not even interact with Islam for Europeans because it would be seen basically as an affront to their decision to marry a born Muslim man from another culture. And usually the husband does not want his wife to interact with men in the first place. And since our organization is almost entirely male to begin with, you can really forget about, them even interacting with us, right? Yeah, and I mean, statistically, I mean, most white female converts get married right after they convert to Islam, right? Either they were already engaged or they already got married really quickly because they want a Muslim family to support them. And I guess by contrast, white male converts are more likely to be single when they do convert. And that's due to several reasons. One of which is that Muslim families are far more reluctant to marry their daughter to a male convert, no matter what their ethnicity is. And even if you have married male converts, they're just usually more free to do what they please and think their own thoughts and contribute to our organization without worry about what their wife is going to say. Um, and just in general, I mean, women who convert to Islam and marry into a Muslim family, or just converts in general, those people who made that decision, who are willing to do that. Your average Westerner is just, you know, if that's not, something that they're even able to do or want to do, to marry into a completely different culture. A lot of them, they may take their shahada silently, but they're not going to announce it publicly if they're not going to get the support, any type of support system after the social fallout. Right. So another deep reason is that again we've spoken out against the progressive left's union with the Muslim community, which has really ramped up anti-white racism amongst Muslims. But I think that we're being mistakenly associated at Islam for Europeans with, I guess, kind of some of these red pill Muslim movements. I guess you might want to call it the right, although that's kind of a nebulous term. And a lot of convert women are just basically repulsed by these kind of red pill Muslims because of this just downright awful things that they say, they make the kind of generalizations they make about Western women. I mean, I'm not going to name names. I mean, I've said his name before on this channel, so I don't need to say it again. I mean, one of the forerunners of this kind of red pill movement, kind of basically normalizes this hyper misogynistic, really taking it to the opposite extreme, kind of combining it with these anti-Western attitudes, calling Western women whores and getting pumped and dumped. Language that's just basically unfathomable as a practicing Muslim. Right. And in addition, we see a lot of Muslims interacting with, the right wing red pill guys. And one example of this is, Andrew Tate. Now, I saw the interview on the Dean show that Eddie had with Andrew Tate. And I appreciate and respect the fact that Andrew has a lot of respect for Islam, how Islam is a deterrent to things like crime and, degeneracy and fornication and alcohol abuse and things like that, and how he has a lot of respect for Muslim countries. And I hope, may Allah guide him to Islam. But I think just like most converts, he has a lot of, I guess, misconceptions regarding many things. And one is the gender relations and how they play out, in toto in the Islamic religion. So a lot of the European right has kind of this skewed hyper masculine red pill version of Islam. That it's been successful exclusively because men have been able to subordinate women. Um, which is basically a half truth. I mean, it doesn't tell the full story of family relations in Islam. And by ignoring that, I was kind of shocked that Eddie didn't bring this up or challenge Andrew during the interview. And for the most part, Eddie did a great job with the interview, but I thought he should have challenged him on this point, and that in Islam, it is the husband's responsibility, to provide everything for his wife: food, clothing, shelter, sexual satisfaction, um, like kind treatment in a way that's according to the culture or the urf. These are all the responsibilities of the husband. And if you cannot provide that for more than one wife, you should only take one. I mean, polygamy is no joke. I mean, a lot of people, I guess, in the Muslim sphere, they push polygamy as if it's going to solve all the West problems. And a lot of the vast majority of Westerners, just like the vast majority of Muslims, are just not ready for polygamy. If they can afford it, great. And if they can treat all their wives equally, great. But it shouldn't be like the default. I mean, you're taking people from level one, trying to teach them about Islam, and then you're introducing all this graduate level stuff that's really, really alien to the Western society. Right? So now the husband provides all those things to his wife, and that's his responsibility. And in turn, the wife is obedient to her husband in things that are good. I mean, a husband cannot tell his wife to do things that are haram, right? And I think that's what a lot of Muslims fail to reiterate during these conversations is two things: that when it comes to children, that whole the role of the husband having one notch over the wife, but still respecting each other, but the wife is submissive to her husband. That relationship in Islam is inverted when we're talking about children, right? So to our parents, I mean, being good to your parents is one of the most important things in Islam. The second most important thing after prayer, actually. And the mother is more highly honored than the father, even because of the pain and the suffering that she went through pregnancy, through childbirth, through weaning us, right? So I mean, that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this inverse relationship of the child to their mother and father, right? So it's reciprocal. And this is why this is when you get the full picture of Islam. And even my conversation with Dutton, a lot of it, the whole idea around like FGM, he was looking at the positives of FGM. And I mean, it's not okay, like maybe if it's some skewed imagination, sure, but it's such a horrific practice in its current form, that it's just horrific. And that's why it's just not a positive thing for Muslim society. I mean, sexual satisfaction is such an important aspect of keeping a good Islamic marriage. And I think that's why, by not bringing this up, I mean, you're just going along with Andrew Tate's version of Islam, without correcting him. And I think it's important to do that, without, trying to, blast him or debating or anything like that. Because, just converts, we just need guidance. A lot of us are misguided. And, we just need to be, nudged along in the right direction. And so it's not I mean, yes, in Islam, the wife is submissive to her husband, but it's not about locking up women in a cage and wrapping them up in a niqab. And we're talking about converts when we're starting at level one, especially for women who convert to Islam. It's just completely off-putting. And that's why I don't associate Islam for Europeans, with these kind of red pill movements. And I think, I want to help to create an Islam for Europeans where all of our converts, whether they're men or women, for European descendant Muslims, that they feel, welcome. They don't feel like they're unsafe, in our organization. And again, this rubs off on a lot of Muslims who deem it all right to discourage men from marrying Western women, even after they converted to Islam, right? So I get the desire to be against feminism, which I'm against as well, like third wave feminism. But I'm completely against disparaging women in this manner. I mean, even after they convert to Islam, a lot of these followers of the person that I mentioned before, that I'm not going to mention, I mean, the way that they talk about our sisters in Islam, you know, right after they converted, you know, a lot of them just want to just keep blaming white women for all of the ills in the Muslim world, to the extent that they just even disparage Muslim men from marrying even convert women, right? You know, which I guess is a silver lining. I mean, you probably don't want to marry these guys in the first place. So, you know, the kind of red pill alt-right movements and the progressive leftist, Muslim movements, they're almost like mirror images of each other. You know, on the one hand, you have the leftist progressivist Muslims who are blaming all the ills in the Muslim world on the white man, you know, to the point where they're even leery of white male converts, you know, and their quote unquote latent racism, right? So you have that. And then on the other hand, you have these red pill, alt-right Muslim accounts blaming all the ills of the Muslim world on the white woman. And I know that they're excluding converts, but, you know, when you're trying to present this to your friends and family, like this is what Islam is, you really don't want to show them these videos because it's just going to totally turn them off. I mean, you're teaching graduate level courses, you know, to people in grade 1. Right. So I think as converts, whether you're male or female, you understand your people the best. You understand what it's like being a convert in general. So for my European descendant sisters in Islam, for my white sisters in Islam, you may think, you know, why quote unquote separate us by race by having Islam for Europeans? Well, again, we're not talking about separation. You know, we're not talking to stop being friends with your African American sisters or Latino sisters. But African American Muslims, they have their own specific struggle. You know, Latino Muslims, they have their own specific struggle. And although there is some overlap, and they will agree with us that there is some overlap between their specific struggle and our specific struggle, it's not necessarily the same struggle. I mean, you know, it's kind of like you have to think of it as like a medical community of doctors, right? You have the umbrella mosque, and just think of that as the hospital, right? But not every medical professional lives in the hospital. You have podiatrists, you have gynecologists, you have, dermatologists, and a lot of them just have their own practices, right? You know, they all specialize in specific things, and that's what we're about. And, but at the same time, all of these medical professionals, they're all concerned about the health of the entire community. You know, they're not divided on that. So I think you have to look at it that way. For African American Muslims, converting to Islam is part of their heritage, right? For us as white converts to Islam or European converts to Islam, under the current zeitgeist, converting to Islam is a complete rejection of our identity, right? And the way mosques treat us as like white saviors is not what African American Muslims experience, and it's not healthy. So I mean, most born Muslims would prefer, if you talk to them, if we collectivize in the same way as Latino and African American Muslims. And I understand that we're just starting out, right? And that I can tell why, white female converts to Islam would not want to join us in any way. But if you think about it, wouldn't your conversion to Islam been a whole lot smoother if there was already a group of, say, 20 to 100 white Muslims that can take you in and have their own organization? That way they can give you the best advice. They can possibly talk to your family. And in the future, help you find a white convert brother from the same background. Someone who understands the culture, what you went through, and, who can talk to your family. Or even if they don't want to talk about Islam, incrementally, just by mere exposure, allaying your family's fears about Islam, right? I mean, if you think about it, every Muslim group historically has survived almost exclusively by converting to Islam en masse, right? And currently, as Euro converts to Islam, that's not what we have. I mean, right now, white people convert to Islam as individuals. We don't convert as a group. We're basically cultural orphans who have no choice but to assimilate into another culture. And that's what we're trying to change here. So I think overall, we as converts understand that changing your life as a Muslim is not going to occur overnight, right? And Islam was revealed to the best nation over a period of 23 years, right? It takes time, sometimes years, for Islam to fully change any society. And when you see these Muslims fawning over these, celebrity white converts, These are people who have dove in fully to converting to Islam, and usually they crash after a few months or years. I mean, the online Muslim world, they just have this really idealized vision of converts and the Muslim community. Right. But like I said before, converts, especially Euro converts, because we have no sub community, we're starting from level 1 and the expectations are insanely high. And I think the vast majority of white convert men are only going to have one wife. And the vast majority of white convert women are not going to be a niqabi who wears all black and has 8 kids. Right. And that's nothing dress we can get into further. I mean, we should start a whole line really of European Islamic clothing, especially for women. Something, things that our ancestors wore, even if it's for Eid and Juma prayer. I think that will change the game in terms of how the Anglosphere views, hijabi Muslim women. Right. Again, I think that's because converting to Islam as a white person is so isolating, right? That only the very strongest will ever do this, convert to Islam publicly and join a Muslim community. I think a better model is going to be us forming a wolf pack of convert men and women who both have their own spheres. Like if a bunch of white convert women joined us, we can give them their own chat. And if we had our own organization, we'd have a section for men, a section for women, and some things we would do together, and they would each work on their own general specific roles. But we're still that way we'd still be interacting respectfully, right? But otherwise, if we don't do this, as a group, both men and women, and Islam for Europeans is just going to consist of a bunch of insults, really. And that's why we need more sisters to join our group, not just for ourselves, but in the long run, to improve the image of Islam in the West as a whole, for the betterment of the whole Muslim community. So that's my time for today. Please subscribe to Islam for Europeans. Please try to share this also with as many convert women to Islam as you can. My name is Robert at Islam for Europeans. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.